There are some creatures that walk upright, wear the skin of men, and speak in the language of your neighbors, yet their hearts are furnaces lit by another kingdom. They are not horned apparitions in shadowy corners. They are far more disarming. Their smiles are pleasant. Their laughter rings in public squares. Their hands may even feel warm when you shake them, but the chill in their presence seeps into you nonetheless. Let us speak plainly, evil rarely introduces itself honestly. It comes dressed for the occasion, adopting whatever form will keep suspicion at bay. And so, the first sign that you are dealing with a human demon is this. They are masters of counterfeit virtue. They can borrow the vocabulary of compassion without ever lifting a burden. They will speak of justice, but only when it costs them nothing. They will praise humility while hungering for recognition. Their goodness is painted gold on the outside, but hollow as a drum within. The second sign is their delight in division. You will notice that strife follows them like a shadow, even if their hands seem clean. They know how to turn friend against friend, family against family, not through overt blows, but through careful whispers, suggestive pauses, and just enough truth to make a lie respectable. Their work is not to unite, but to fracture, for fractures invite the rot to spread. Third, beware the inversion of morality they promote. Wrong becomes right, cruelty becomes courage, and self-indulgence is baptized as self-care. They are skilled at making wickedness sound noble, especially when it serves their appetite. If you challenge them, you may be accused not merely of error, but of evil itself. They thrive when language loses its compass, when words no longer mean what they were made to mean. The fourth sign is their predatory hunger for the vulnerable. They circle the weak as wolves do, watching for limps in the soul. They are not always violent. In fact, many kill more dreams than bodies. They take advantage of trust, exploit innocence, and feed off the naivete of those who have not yet learned that not every extended hand means to help you stand. And lastly, the fifth sign, an absence of true remorse. You may catch them red-handed. You may even hear the words, "I'm sorry," but watch closely. There will be no turning, no change, no recoil from the harm done. Remorse for them is a performance to preserve advantage, not a wound in the heart that drives repentance. Such people are dangerous precisely because they look like people. And perhaps the greatest peril is this, that we might believe ourselves immune to becoming one. The seed of their corruption lives in every human chest. The difference is whether it is watered or starved. So keep your eyes sharp, not for the monsters in stories, but for the smiling stranger in the market, the colleague at the next desk, or the voice at your own dinner table. And guard, above all, your own heart, for that is where both the enemy and your only defense truly dwell. A master of counterfeit virtue is rarely obvious at first glance, for the disguise is crafted with extraordinary care. They learn the shapes and tones of goodness, the way a spy learns the language of a foreign land, until their imitation is convincing enough to pass among the unsuspecting. Their politeness will be practiced, their smiles warm enough to disarm you, their words seemingly aligned with all the noble ideals you have been taught to value. They will speak about kindness as if they have made it their life's work, talk of honesty as though it is the air they breathe, and commend the virtues of patience and humility as if they themselves were saints among men. Yet all this is a careful performance, an elaborate mask worn not to bless others, but to protect and advance themselves. The good they display is ornamental, like a gilded statue, attractive to the eye yet lifeless and cold to the touch. You will find they are skilled at knowing which virtues the people around them most admire, and these they will display with calculated precision. In one place, they may pose as the ever-compassionate soul, eager to help, quick to sympathize. In another, they may wear the stern robe of justice, insisting they stand for what is right, even when others fall away. This is not because they truly value these virtues, but because they have learned the immense social power that comes from appearing virtuous. Goodness, when genuine, flows naturally from the heart and requires no advertisement. But for them, every gesture is deliberate, every act of charity, carefully staged to be seen and remembered. They understand that virtue commands trust, and trust opens doors. And once those doors are open, they have access to influence, to resources, to people they can manipulate for their own ends. Their counterfeit goodness is not the byproduct of a good heart, but the primary tool of their trade. They may even cloak their ambitions in noble language, convincing others that their personal gain is actually a communal victory. When confronted, they will often remind you of the good they have done, as if the quantity of their acts could erase the emptiness of their motives. This form of deception is particularly dangerous because it appeals to what is best in us. Our desire to believe in human goodness, our reluctance to question someone who appears to stand for what is right. We expect evil to announce itself with a snarl or a scowl, but when it comes draped in gentleness, we are less likely to resist it. The counterfeit virtuous person counts on this. They know that suspicion directed towards someone who does so much good will be frowned upon, and so they weave themselves into the moral fabric of a community until questioning them feels like questioning goodness itself. They will frequently engage in symbolic acts of virtue that cost them little yet yield them much admiration. They may champion causes they have no personal sacrifice invested in, speak eloquently on principles they do not practice, or align themselves with noble figures to borrow the shine of their reputation. What they cannot produce in sincerity, they make up for in theatre. The applause they receive is not an encouragement toward goodness. It is the very payment they seek. If you watch closely, however, there will be cracks, moments when their mask slips just enough for you to glimpse the hunger beneath. Perhaps they will express irritation when their good deeds go unnoticed, or show a sudden lack of compassion when no one is looking. They may betray their own principles when faced with a choice that could cost them dearly. True virtue endures even when it is unseen. Counterfeit virtue wilts the moment it is no longer profitable to maintain. In their presence, you may feel an unease you cannot immediately name. It is the quiet dissonance between the surface and the substance, between the words they speak and the life they live. You will see them praised often, but if you listen closely, you may notice that those who know them most intimately rarely speak of them with the same warmth as those who only know the public mask. The distance between their image and their reality is the space where deception thrives, and in that space, the counterfeit virtuous person works with patience, waiting for the moment their performance will yield its intended reward. Those skilled in sowing division and twisting morality rarely begin with open hostility. They work in subtler ways, like a slow poison slipped into the cup. Their strength lies not in loud confrontations, but in careful suggestions, in nudges and whispers that seem harmless at first. They plant seeds of doubt in conversations, tilting the truth just enough to bend a person's view of another. It is not always what they say that wounds. It is the pauses, the raised eyebrows, the tone that implies far more than words could. A single well-timed remark can linger in the mind of the hearer, growing into suspicion, eroding trust, and eventually making allies seem like adversaries. They understand the fragile nature of unity, how relationships, families, and communities are held together by invisible threads of trust and goodwill. Their craft is in fraying these threads until what was once whole is now a tangle of misunderstandings and resentments. They may do this under the guise of honesty, presenting themselves as merely sharing their concerns or speaking hard truths, but their aim is not to heal, it is to wound. Every word is chosen not to clarify but to distort, not to bring light but to cast shadows. When it comes to morality, their method is no less calculated. They take what is wrong and dress it in the robes of righteousness, ensuring that even the most destructive behavior appears justified. This is the inversion of truth, a slow turning of moral compasses until they point towards self-interest rather than integrity. Acts of selfishness are reframed as acts of courage, cruelty becomes a sign of strength, and indulgence is declared a necessary form of self-expression. The lines between right and wrong are blurred until the very question of moral responsibility begins to feel outdated or irrelevant. They are skilled in using language as both camouflage and weapon. Words that once carried clear meaning are repurposed to fit their agenda. Love becomes a tool for enabling harm. Freedom becomes license for exploitation. Tolerance becomes the silencing of dissent. They understand that if they can control the definitions of words, they can control the boundaries of thought itself. A world where language has no anchor is a world where anything can be justified, and in such a world they thrive. Often, they will find fault in those who resist their distortions, painting principled individuals as intolerant, unkind, or even dangerous. This tactic serves two purposes. It isolates the opposition and discourages others from joining them. In this way, they divide not only relationships but entire groups, ensuring that mistrust is the air everyone breathes. Once division takes root, they can shape the fractured pieces according to their will, playing one against the other while maintaining the appearance of being above the conflict. Their presence in any community leaves a trail of quiet devastation. Friends stop speaking, families grow distant, colleagues turn on one another, all while the one who set these fires walks calmly among the ashes, presenting themselves as a peacemaker or a victim of misunderstanding. The chaos they create is not random. It is designed to keep others too distracted or disoriented to notice the deeper manipulation at work. The danger of their influence lies in its subtlety. Rarely will they make outright demands or issue open threats. Instead, they shape the atmosphere, shift the conversation, redefine the terms, and let the resulting conflict do their work for them. They know that divided people are easier to control, easier to exploit, and far less likely to unite against a common threat. The twisting of morality is not merely a personal flaw in them. It is a deliberate strategy, a means to dismantle the shared foundations that allow trust, truth, and justice to stand. Those who prey upon the vulnerable often present themselves as protectors, drawing near with apparent concern while concealing the hunger that drives them. They are alert to weakness in ways most people are not, scanning their surroundings not for beauty or opportunity to serve, but for signs of fragility they can exploit. A hesitant voice, a lack of confidence, a desperate need for belonging. These are not signals for them to offer genuine help, but invitations to advance. They read people as others might read maps, identifying the safest routes to the treasure they seek, whether that treasure is trust, influence, resources, or control. Their predation is not always loud or violent. In fact, the quiet hunter is often more effective than the roaring one. They may pose as mentors, friends, or confidants, wrapping their intentions in layers of apparent generosity. They understand that the vulnerable are often searching for someone to listen, someone to affirm them, someone to stand beside them. They step into this role with calculated care, providing just enough comfort to win loyalty, just enough sympathy to keep the door open. Once trust is secured, they begin to take, bit by bit at first, so the cost is barely noticed. A favor here, a concession there, a small compromise that seems harmless until the pattern emerges too late. They are adept at keeping their true nature hidden from outsiders. Those on the inside of their web often find it hard to explain what is happening to them, because the harm is woven into moments that look like kindness from a distance. This is part of the predator's advantage. They can inflict deep damage while maintaining an outward image of benevolence. To the untrained eye, they appear generous. To those caught in their grasp, they are draining and relentless. One of their most insidious tactics is to foster dependency. They will position themselves as the indispensable source of support, guidance, or opportunity, subtly discouraging the vulnerable from seeking strength elsewhere. This dependency ensures that when harm comes, the victim feels they have nowhere else to turn. Such isolation deepens the predator's control, for it is far easier to manipulate someone who believes escape is impossible. They may even frame their exploitation as a form of protection, persuading the vulnerable that without them, the world would be far harsher. True remorse is absent in their dealings, for their perspective does not allow them to see the vulnerable as equals. To them, people exist in two categories, those who can be used and those who cannot. When confronted with the harm they have caused, they may deny it outright, minimize it, or shift the blame onto the very person they exploited. If pressed into an apology, it will be a hollow performance designed to end the confrontation, not to acknowledge guilt or seek repair. There is no genuine turning from wrongdoing, only a recalculation of how to proceed without losing their advantage. The damage they leave behind is not always visible in broken bodies, but in broken spirits. They erode self-worth, distort self-perception, and undermine the ability to trust. A person who has been in the hands of such a predator may find themselves second, guessing every decision, doubting their own value, and hesitating to form new connections. This lingering harm is perhaps the predator's most lasting legacy, for it continues to shape the life of the vulnerable long after the predator has moved on to their next target. They often justify their actions to themselves, painting the vulnerable as weak, naive, or deserving of exploitation. In this way, they silence any remaining whisper of conscience. The absence of remorse is not merely the lack of feeling sorry. It is the absence of moral recognition that what they have done is wrong. They see their success not as theft, but as cleverness. Their manipulation not as cruelty, but as the natural order in which the strong take from the weak.